Realize.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all participants joining us from around the world and everyone who is watching our live stream on YouTube. Please feel free to comment and ask questions using the chat. We'll be happy to deliver your questions to the speakers after their contributions during the sessions. My name is Ernesto Lemke, and I will be your moderator for today. I represent the Secretariat of the German-Brazilian Digital Dialogue, an initiative that fosters collaboration and exchange in digital policy, innovation, and technology between Germany and Brazil. It is the very core of the German-Brazilian Digital Dialogue to involve experts from academia, the private sector, and civil society. That's why we are all the more proud to organize today's webinar in collaboration with the G20 engagement groups B20 and T20. We hope for a vivid discussion today around our crucial topic on AI regulation in the environment, pathways to a sustainable planet. In our function as a secretariat to a political dialogue, we are eager to learn more about the positions of different stakeholders from around the world. So I'm happy to now give the floor to our representatives from B20 and P20. We will start, or the webinar will be officially open with our distinguished speaker from the B20 group, Fernando de Riso. He is chair of the B20 Digital Transformation and CEO of TUPI, a Brazilian multinational in the metallurgical sector. Mr. de Riso brings a wealth of experience in leading digital transformation initiatives on a global scale. Joining him is Bruno Bioni, lead co-chair of T20's Inclusive Digital Transformation. He is also founder and director of Data Privacy Brazil, an advocacy organization who advocates for inclusive, equitable technology advancements and data privacy rights in Brazil. And I'd like now to turn the floor over to Mr. de Riso for his opening remarks. Please, Mr. de Riso, go ahead.
Thank you, Ernesto. Thank you, Luisa. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. So I just want to start congratulating the GIZ for the initiative. It is essential to have webinars that allow us to debate at high-level topics as relevant as artificial intelligence and sustainability, and they operate together. I also thank the participation of the other engagement groups in the panels. This interaction allows us to identify common agendas and strengthen positions before the G20 plenary. Today, I'm here as the chair of the B20 Digital Transformation Task Force. B20 is the private sector engagement group and operates under the coordination of the Brazilian National Industry Confederation. Our task force has 9 co-chairs and 165 members. They are leaders of large companies based in 23 nations and represent more than 13 economic sectors. In addition to Siemens and Ericsson, which will participate in the panels that will follow, companies such as Allianz, Bayer, BASF, SAP, Google, Microsoft are with us, and many others. This gives us the conviction that we are representing the private sector as a whole, and not just some specific subsector such as big techs, services, the financial or manufacturing industry. We had 6 months of work with 12 virtual meetings. From the beginning, we established a common goal to guide our discussions, to generate recommendations that make digital transformation a catalyst for inclusive, sustainable, and ethical progress, elevating populations' overall well-being. This is the goal. So this common goal was fundamental for us to be able to prioritize the topics to be worked on. This is because we were requested to prepare a maximum of 3 recommendations. We are aware that there are numerous possible recommendations on the subject of digital transformation. However, our chances of seeing our recommendations implemented increased if we work deeply and robustly on a small set of public policies. We chose to continue in this way instead of superficially addressing a large number of topics related to digital transformation. Our group came up with 3 recommendations. The first one is to achieve meaningful connectivity for individuals and businesses. Digital inclusion is the foundation of digital transformation. Once the foundation is in place, the next step is to ensure that people and organizations are safe. That's the reason why our second recommendation is to safeguard individuals, organizations, and promote the digital trust. Finally, digital inclusion and a safe operation enable an ethical and sustainable scaling of emerging technologies. From these emerging technologies, artificial intelligence is currently the one that is highlighted both in business and in the civil society. Our third recommendation is to responsibly harness the transformative power of artificial intelligence by supporting its development and adoption while collaborating to achieve a shared ambition and common principles for ethics, sustainability, security, and inclusion. Considering the subjects that will be discussed during the panels today, I will briefly underline what we discussed about environmental impact. There are opportunities and concerns. On the opportunity side, AI is emerging as a powerful tool to mitigate environmental impact and climate change. It can enhance climate models and optimize processes, reducing the use of resources. The concerns are mainly about direct energy consumption, carbon emissions from non-renewable sources, and fresh water consumption for cooling. While global data centers, the energy consumption remained relatively flat for nearly a decade, it's now experiencing a steep increase. This surge is driven by multiple technologies such as cryptocurrencies and cloud computing. But AI is expected to be a major contributor, or offender in this case. In this context, addressing AI's environmental impact becomes a crucial aspect of responsible development and scaling of the technology. Multiple companies are taking proactive steps to minimize their footprint. This includes optimizing software and hardware to maximize energy efficiency, utilizing renewable energy sources to power these training processes, developing alternative liquid cooling solutions, and even leveraging AI itself to accelerate innovations in sustainable technology. The following panels will certainly address some of these initiatives and many others that are underway, so that we can promote the use of AI and collect its benefits in a responsible way. So thank you. I wish everyone a great webinar. Okay, thank you, Ernesto.
Thank you, Mr. De Riso, for your opening remarks and giving us an overview of the interesting work of B20, what you have done during the last couple of months. And now let me pass on the word to Mr. Brioni, our T20 representative, to give his opening remarks. Please, Mr. Brioni, go ahead.
Thank you, Ernesto. Thank you so much for the kind invitation from GISZ. So it has been a great journey to partnering with all of you. So I'd like to thank especially Luisa and our dear friends from GIZ here based in Brazil. As I was introduced before, my name is Bruno Bioni. I'm Executive Director of Data Privacy Brazil, and Data Privacy Brazil is one of the co-lead chairs of the Task Force on Inclusive Digital Transformation within T20, the think tank's engagement group, alongside Observer Research Foundation, which is the another co-chair. And our group could gathered more than 20 core members. So we were divided in 6 different subtracks, thematic subtracks, from meaningful digital inclusion to information integrity, and AI was one of the thematic subtracks, actually the 5th subtrack that we addressed during this first semester. But actually, the AI as a technology itself also was a transversal topic and matter that we could also somehow notes that reflects also during the others subtracts, such as information integrity, because in order to reach a healthier information ecosystem in terms of to tackle misinformation and other side effects, AI is one of the key technologies in terms to reach a more resilient governance. And I'd like to highlight two specific policy recommendations that we concluded in the last month. We released our policy statement just 1 week ago. The first one is how we are seeing a very unique momentum in terms of global governance on AI. So the first recommendation highlights the importance with some specific multilateral forums, such as what we have seen at the United Nations, that tries to accelerate the public scrutiny on those technologies. So far, is still a heavy asymmetry of information in order to better explore not only the benefits that are still somehow speculative, but also what are the concrete risks that we have been already suffered in the society, but what are the possible tools in order to mitigate and in order to have a better risk management in this process. So one of our recommendations highlights the importance to have somehow tools to reduce that kind of asymmetry of information. That's why we support heavily initiatives such as that we have seen in United Nations with the establishment of a panel, a multidisciplinary panel, similar what we have seen with regards the APCC panel for AI, in order to raise data evidence to have a more informative discussion in that regard. And the second policy recommendation, which I think is very informative for our discussion as well, is that we have to have a more informative conversation with regards not only computational power, but also about data power, because not only AI, but other technologies are necessarily being fulfilled by data. And here is somehow on a way to frame other possible agenda in order to take a step back and not only to discuss governance on AI, but governance on data itself. This is on a way that we could take the roots of the possibilities, the capabilities, but also of the problems. That's why T20 is proposing a creation of a new engagement group called Data 20, D20, in order to not have fragmented conversations about data governance from different engagement groups, from health to climate, but somehow together the representatives of Sherpa's track and also from the G social track, from C20 to B20, in order to gather all those representatives and to have a coordinated discussion on data in order to have a common approach. So this second policy recommendation, I think it's also somehow very connected with AI governance, even though it's not explicitly and even in a terminology way being labeled as AI, but is somehow very connected. And also, as I mentioned before, it's the basic approach that we should explore a little bit. And just to conclude, we are in this moment that we are trying to find a consensus in a joint declaration that is being discussed not only by T20, B20, Labor 20, W20, and also C20, the Civil Society Engagement Group. And one thing that we are also trying to highlight is the environmental paradox of AI. of course, in some way, AI could be an enabler to accelerate a green transition. But as was highlighted before in the previous presentation, the side effects on AI with regards consumption, high consumption of water and electricity is also very present. So we have also to take into account that AI is not like the silver bullet to achieve sustainable development goals, but also impose somehow a challenging scenario, specifically when we take in consideration the large language models and other foundational models on AI that, again, we can see a high consumption of water and electricity. So I'd like to conclude inviting all of you to access our policy statement that is available in the 20 website, and also invite you to check out an event that we organized in São Luís called Bridging Boundaries on AI, that we also had this joint conversation, cooperative discussion between different engagement groups in order to better coordinate our efforts with that such transversal topic such as AI. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bioni, for your opening remarks and highlighting also the crucial work that you're doing with T20, especially also the interesting news of Data 20. I think it's worthwhile to reflect upon it. And now let's start with our two session topics. Our first panel will delve more into the policy and regulatory matters related to AI and sustainability across Europe, Latin America, and also other regions. It will focus on the frameworks and legislative actions shaping the integration of AI and sustainable practices. For our second panel, we will explore how AI can contribute to sustainability, and we also look at the significant impact of AI industries on the global south. The discussion will address the opportunities and challenges AI represents in this region, emphasizing ethical considerations and equitable resource distribution. Together, these panels aim to provide a comprehensive understanding of the complex relationship between AI and sustainability that we also could now understand more with the opening remarks of Fernando de Riso and also Bruno Bioni. So we are honored now to have three distinguished speakers with us today. From Germany, we have Kilian Wiedemann. He is Deputy Team Lead for Policy and Advocacy at Algorithm Watch, a nonprofit organization who sheds light on algorithm decision-making processes that have a social relevance. His work focuses, as I said, also on algorithm decision-making in the public sector, as well as AI and sustainability. Joining him is Anita Gurumurthy from India. She is Executive Director at IT for Change, an Indian nonprofit organization working at the intersection of technology and society. She is also here representing the T20 Working Group. She's co-chair of the T20 Working Group on Digital Transformation. Her focus areas include advocacy on data and AI governance, as well as platform regulation. And lastly, we have our representative from the B20 group, Luis Mosquera. He is Vice President at Siemens and in charge for legal, governance affairs, and sustainability. And he is co-chairing the digital transformation group at B20. So now I'd like to turn the floor over to Mr. Wiedemann for his presentation. The floor is yours.
Yes, hello. Can you see the slides and can you hear me well?
Yes, we can.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today and to present here in this fantastic dialogue. As was said, my name is Kilian Wiedemann. I'm the Deputy Head of Policy at Algorithm Watch, and Algorithm Watch is a non-governmental organization based in Berlin and Zurich, and we work on AI and algorithmic decision-making. And we've had a flagship project, I would say, on the sustainability of AI. And what I'm going to present now is largely draws on the results of this project. And I want to, make the point and present why we need to measure the environmental impacts of AI and why we need a policy framework to do that, to address those environmental impacts. But first, need to understand the problem better than we do today. And let me see here. So the brief agenda of my input is that I want to quickly talk about the false balance of AI's environmental harms and benefits, then talk about the lack of transparency around sustainable AI, and then go to our proposal for measuring the energy and resource consumption of AI, because as the previous two speakers have already pointed out, it seems to be a common understanding that we have an environmental problem with AI, that AI is really a driver of environmental harms, and we urgently need to address that before it's too late and before harmful and environmentally damaging infrastructures are put in place. Because the story typically starts here. Typically, the stories about AI and sustainability start with how can AI help achieve sustainable development goals, make our planet more sustainable, our societies more sustainable. And I'm not saying that these debates are not well-founded or irrelevant, but today I want to turn this discussion a bit around and focus on the environmental harms of AI first. Because let's face it, the large majority of AI systems are not on the market to address environmental problems, to address climate change and so on. They are on the market for completely different reasons. They don't need to be bad reasons, but the environmental problems that are underlying are relevant across the board. So it's really a fundamental question how sustainable our AI is, regardless of what the aim is that it's being deployed for. And we can see already today, as was pointed out, that we are looking into a large energy problem with the spread of large language models and image generators and other large AI systems. Microsoft has said they have a huge increase in energy consumption and CO2 emissions. Google has said the same. So now what these big tech companies start doing is pushing their climate goals down the road, because they all want to be first in the race for AI, and suddenly environmental concerns are not that important anymore. And they also start being very clear about the problem in itself. At the World Economic Forum, Sam Altman, the head of OpenAI, said that he can only see this development of AI, of generative AI moving forward with an energy breakthrough. So he admitted, that was one of the most prominent moments where he admitted that there's really energy consumption is really high, and they don't really know how they want to solve this problem, and how they can even generate enough energy to continue this line of AI development. Because the solution that he suggested was nuclear fusion technologies, and that's not really a feasible technology that's on the table today. So what is our status quo? AI providers do not measure and publish enough comprehensive data on energy and resource consumption. So we do not understand all the environmental and climate harms that they are causing. And that's also really important, we don't have a good basis for effective policy making, because policies need to be proportionate, they need to be targeted, and we need to understand the problem and need to know what we want to solve much better to address this. And as was already pointed out as well, is that it's actually way too limited to just talk about energy in this context. Another big problem is the water consumption of data centers, and data centers are being driven by the development of AI across the world. And this goes both for the development and training of AI models, but also for the use, because with the large language models, we see also a much higher water consumption during the usage of these models, not just during training. And this, of course, leads to conflicts and fights over these scarce resources. We've looked into, I just picked this one example from Uruguay, where people are protesting against a new data center by Google, but you could have like across the board many other examples from Chile and so on, where the data centers are being moved there because you have access to lots of renewable energy and you need this electricity. But these regions are also often very dry and water scarce regions. So you create a conflict of interest here with the local population. And also a global justice issue, because the harms and the benefits of these technologies are unevenly distributed. But of course, this problem is not entirely new, and some regulatory approaches have been made to address it. And we've been at Algorithm Watch, we've been working a lot on the European Union's Artificial Intelligence Act. And it would take too much time to go into all the details of this regulation, but I wanted to highlight like these three specific points where this regulation addresses the question of sustainability. And the first is that it requires the standardized documentation of energy and research use of high-risk AI systems. And high-risk AI systems is one specific category of AI systems within the Artificial Intelligence Act. If that's interesting to you, I could explain this classification later on in more detail. But for now, it's standards are being developed now for how high-risk AI systems could become more energy and resource efficient. There will also be voluntary codes of conduct that are now being developed. The regulation will enter into force on August 1st. So it's really very new, and all of this is just a piece of paper for now, and all the implementation still has to happen. So also the development of the voluntary codes of conduct on environmental impact still needs to happen. And thirdly, what I listed under number C is probably the most important and most relevant part, is that all generative AI models, or as the regulation calls it, general purpose AI models, must now measure or estimate and document the energy consumption of these models. So there's one part of the regulation that addresses not AI systems, but AI models, these large language models and image generating models that we all have gotten to know so well over the past 2 years. And this was, of course, a big political fight, but this was the compromise that made it into the final law, that at least the energy consumption must be documented. But of course, we see this, and I think many in the group will agree, we see this only as a first step. We would advocate for a more comprehensive policy approach here. A comprehensive policy approach that addresses the entire production chain of AI, starting from raw materials to material manufacturing, the equipment manufacturing, system development and training, also system deployment, and then the disposal of all this hardware that is used for these AI models and AI systems. And we looked into how could we actually develop transparency along the entire production chain and what would be relevant. and we defined five categories of information, of data that would be relevant. And this is not just energy, that is the one that most people talk about, but also the emissions, the water consumption, the minerals being used, and the electronic waste. And then we went ahead because policymakers were telling us that this is too complicated. No one knows how to measure this. This is not feasible. And then we had a look at where do we have concrete measurement tools in place to do this. And where you see the green dots, this is where we found like concrete tools that are already being used and well in place, that we can use to measure and document these kinds of environmental impacts. And only where you have the red dots, we would need to come up with new ideas and new approaches to do this, which, yeah, it's also a fast-moving field, and some ideas have already been put on the table. So this is, this is my brief intervention to how we see this idea of regulating environmental impacts of AI. We've produced 3 sustained magazines where we listed lots of other ideas about environmental impacts of AI. It all goes, circles around questions of sustainable AI. And so if you want to take a look, these QR codes lead you to this, to these magazines. And I think now, I guess my time is up, so I will need to stop here. But thanks very much for the attention, and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Diedelmann, also for your insightful presentation regarding the need also of data for the further development of AI, and looking really upon what environmental impact AI industries can have. And yeah, congratulations on your completion of the SUSTAIN project. Let me now turn over to Ms. Gurumati. She will now give us her input. Please, Ms. Gurumati.
Thank you very much. I hope I'm audible enough. So I'm extremely grateful to my previous speakers for laying out the issue so comprehensively. And the urgency of the issue is quite manifest in the fact that the industry itself is sending out cautionary messages. Just a couple of days ago, we had Goldman Sachs, send out a warning in a report that the technology isn't designed to solve the complex problems that would justify the costs, which may not decline as many expect. So the writing on the wall and the reading in the teacup is really somewhat disturbing. Now, despite this, we actually see a lot of hype, and the training and development of large-scale AI models, as has already been argued, requires large computational and storage clusters with vast environmental costs. And just to drive home the point, a single advanced AI chip can consume more energy than the average US household. So this is something that's often cited. And also, we've heard about the water consumption, and of course, and there are varying estimations in a world where we're not really measuring all this consumption of energy. But, well, it's estimated that as much as 4% would be what information and communications technologies consume in terms of total global emissions, carbon emissions. Now, that is comparable to the aviation industry in terms of the contribution to climate change. And GPT-3, which has now been surpassed, and the most recent LLMs are probably even more energy intensive. And people point out very often, and those of us interested in this field would have as such read many of the statistics or averages, which is what happens when you put in a prompt in ChatGPT, right? So the whole idea of using chatbots, which is the whole inference process, is very, very energy intensive. It seems, therefore, that the benefits are really to the large chip companies and utilities, and we've still to see what the social benefits are like. So with this very, very brief background, I'd also like to open up the debate from a global South perspective. What's really worrisome is that with respect to the innumerable and the ever proliferating debates, discourses on AI regulation, we actually see very few explicitly call for environmental legislation. Rather, the focus is very much on consumer interests and overall safety at best. So you see terms and approaches of risk mitigation rather than really seeing the environment question as core to regulatory intervention. And most approaches argue for self-regulation, a voluntary approach, and not necessarily, sustainability obligations, or as my previous speaker said, a production chain approach, which is evidently what we need. Also, I think that emerging issues that are often forgotten are socioeconomic in nature. And I just read this recently. The Greater London Authority has told developers that new housing projects in West London could be banned till 2035 because data centers have taken up all the electricity capacity. So new projects are being rejected in these neighborhoods because the grid has run out of capacity for new homes. So we are actually talking about opportunity costs. When we talk about AI and SDGs, we can't really look at it in this kind of unilinear approach that AI will essentially bring benefits, which assumption needs to be unpacked and questioned and examined. So one can only imagine what the opportunity cost will be like for developing countries like mine when we invite big tech to build data centers. And very often we see our governments doing this without public consultation. So the question I'd like to pose is green digitalization even possible? Is it an oxymoron? In terms of the current model, all indications so far show that the data centers and HBM chips for AI are using up more energy, more water. And we're also forgetting that when we talk about using recycled water, there are energy requirements for recycling water. So these are actually the contradictions, and we cannot paint this kind of monolithic story. We're also noticing that despite all this discourse about renewable energy, Google's carbon emission jumped almost 50% from 2019 to 2023. And carbon offsets and carbon trading seems to be a very, very easy option for big tech. And this is really important to bring to the fore from a global south perspective. I'd like to give an example from Colombia, and a project in Colombia that aims to generate additional income for very, very small coffee and cocoa growers by promoting agroforestry has brought in a carbon trading digital platform called Acon. And here, these schemes are usually, we see that this is usually for conservation and afforestation, but the carbon trading is now slowly getting into agricultural lands and ecosystems based on large data-based platforms. And peasant families that have been interviewed express concerns about lack of information, lack of transparency, lack of independent complaint possibilities, and of course of coercive farming practices by these companies, which tell peasants what to do despite the negative environmental damage. So what we actually see is not only is regulation lax, we also see in global trends how digitalization and financialization impinge on the rights of peasants, small food producers, and their natural ecosystems through a push for techno-economic models, as if there's no choice to build AI differently. So we have this monolithic story, and we kind of peddle this story. I'd like to come to the issue of what is to be done, because I think that the focus here is not just on carbon emission, energy use, etc. We need a holistic assessment also in terms of extractivism of critical minerals. And this is not only extraction on land, we have to also consider the deep sea and outer space. And these are all areas where there are international, transnational, global cooperation and legislation. This is an area for international common law, and it's a very important consideration. We really have to make big tech accountable, I think, and the future of data and AI governance is being debated now. And here the imperative is not only to make it anti-extractive and non-exploitative, it has to really respect the rights and knowledge of indigenous communities and other vulnerable groups. I'd like to make, just in a minute, concluding observations about what's happening. And the previous speaker has already told us about the nuclear fusion options that are being put on the table, as if that's a place to go. We see Silicon Valley peddling risky and irresponsible pipe dreams like nuclear fusion. What we really need is a shift in the conversation, a greater transparency about actual environmental costs, and the presentation about how do you standardize mandatory disclosures around these issues is really important. So I'm thankful to the previous speaker. The second is to explore the viability of smaller AI models for specific use cases. There is not adequate capital investment in the exploration of alternatives. And the questions to ask are, how can a coming together of public backbones and people's commons, community partnerships, how is that going to change the nature of AI? How do we cultivate a localized data ecosystem like Bruno pointed out? How do we have laws that evolve limits on energy and water consumption by large data centers? What are the new ownership models for data that are needed so that this idea of AI on scale can be challenged by different imaginations, productivity, and meaning to build a resilient and regenerative AI economy? And finally, I'd like to say that there's an urgent need for the creation of multilateral frameworks for international cooperation. And I'd like to ask from the Biodiversity Convention in particular, what would, in the context of AI and sustainability, be the meaning of the precautionary principle? How do we operationalize this? And even as we talk about non-extractive, decolonial, equitable AI, how do we get there without a common but differentiated set of responsibilities? We cannot impose the same set of responsibilities on all the countries. And therefore, we really need to look at cooperation through various international malpractices like cross-border trade of illegally extracted minerals, etc. So regulatory interoperability and global cooperation are very, very foundational. And I really hope that the G20 conversations and cooperation among countries really takes into account the disproportionate impact of the current large AI model and the monolithic discourse on the global south. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gumati, for sharing the global south perspective on this issue, especially also looking at how local communities, indigenous communities can be harmed by AI industries, but also highlighting the need for a holistic approach so we can really work upon a sustainable AI ecosystem. And now let me turn to Luis Mosquera for his contribution. Please, Mr. Mosquera, go ahead.
Many thanks, Ernesto. Thanks for my colleagues in the panel. Thanks for my colleagues in the G20 and T20. As discussed before by my colleagues in the panel, we have lots of challenges ahead. But I want to look to the upside here. We also have benefits and huge benefits ahead. We are living, let's say, in a golden age of data. We are experiencing technology innovation in a fast pace that we cannot compare with the other technology breakthroughs that we had in the past, such as industrial revolution or adoption of electrification or automation. Now things are moving really, really fast, and we will see solutions in the near future that we cannot even imagine today. So AI is crucial here, and AI will help us to tackle two of the most critical challenges for the humanity today. First is sustainability, specifically decarbonization, and second, productivity. Economies, countries, regions, companies, they are all fighting for space. And in this sense, I see that Brazil is in a unique position due to our clean energy matrix. AI is an activity that is very intensive in terms of energy consumption. So Brazil, with its clean energy matrix, is very well positioned to attract investments. And in addition to this, the size of our population. Our big population means generation of lots of data, and it will help to train AI models. So this is why I believe that Brazil is very well positioned to attract investments on AI. As I mentioned before, AI is very energy intense activity, but we can leverage AI to tackle this problem of energy consumption. If we adopt some AI tools like digital twins, predictive maintenance, use AI to track and to draw climate models to prevent climate events, to predict climate events, I think that it will help us to offset this energy consumption. So in my view, the benefits are way bigger than the risks that we are facing. But in the other sense, we need to make sure that we have a safe and ethical use of AI. And this is a challenge for regulators, for society, for companies, for think tanks. This is a big challenge. So AI regulation can promote sustainable development. AI with energy efficiency tools to help to decarbonize buildings, industries, cities. So huge impact, huge positive impact for our society. The use of AI to in the circular economy, let's say, in the circular economy, from the project of a product until the manufacturing process, we can apply AI tools, and then we can also generate a positive impact to the environment. Environmental monitoring of critical areas, as I mentioned before, prevention and response to natural disasters. So these are all fields that we can apply AI, but regulatory harmonization is key. We need to work together as a civil society, with government, with think tanks to build a harmonized regulatory framework. With the common standards, we will make sure that we have, we reduce or remove barriers for international trade. We also have an easier environment for multinational companies to operate in multiple jurisdictions. So harmonized regulatory framework is crucial here. A flexible regulation is also very, very important because the technology is evolving at a very fast pace, and the regulator cannot lock a country in a certain model because the technology is still evolving. So we are avoiding the risk of creating an island and to create problems for the economic development or for the innovation in the country. And policy harmonization is also easy for the monitoring and for the fiscalization. So this is why it's important to have an harmonization of policies in different geographies. And international cooperation is crucial here. We are also in an age of co-creation. It's very difficult to win by yourself, alone, without cooperation, without sharing with other companies, with governments, with other entities. So in the age of co-creation, we need to take advantage of winning experiences from other countries, from other regions. We need to look beyond our borders to create our regulatory framework. And here in Brazil, we are facing a huge discussion, huge debate around the legislative bill on AI. It was supposed to be voted yesterday at the Legislative House, but the votation was postponed due to the necessity of more qualified discussions. So we need to look beyond our borders to learn from the others, to learn from winning experiences elsewhere. So this is a challenge for us, for companies, for government, for trade associations, for think tanks. And I think that we are doing our part here by promoting this dialogue. I think that the result of this dialogue will be very positive to set the north line for the creation of positive regulation, not only here in Brazil, but in all of the countries affected or that are participating in this discussion. So I'm very optimistic with the debate, and I'm very optimistic about the future with AI. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mosquera, and also for giving us the perspective of the benefits of AI and also highlighting the need for international cooperation in this field. And thank you also for informing us on the current debate of the AI bill here in Brazil. Let us now continue with our second panel, where we have our distinguished guest. We have our distinguished guest, is Friederike Rode from the Institute of Ecological and Economic Research from Germany. And with her is Jacqueline Lopez from Ericsson. She is Director of Institutional Relations at for the Latin American region at Ericsson, and also co-chair of the International Chamber of Commerce for the Digital Economic Commission. And lastly, we have Boya Adegogo from Nigeria. He's Senior Manager at the Paradigm Initiative, an African initiative that works to connect underserved young Africans with digital opportunities and ensure protection of their rights. So I now hand over to Ms. Rode for her contribution on our second panel.
Thank you very much. And yeah, thanks for inviting me. And we've already heard a lot about the sustainability impacts of AI systems, especially from the perspective of the Global South, which was really interesting also for us. And I want to share some insights on what does the sustainability perspective on AI systems actually mean and what it's about. So we've already heard this from my colleague from Algorithm Watch. Like we have like these two kind of discourses. The first one is like, how can we apply machine learning in areas that could support the sustainable development goals, such as climate modeling, energy transition, agriculture, all those things. But this is only a small proportion of all AI systems that are actually existing, which are used in this area. And then we have the perspective of how can we well, create a sustainable design of AI systems along the life cycle, like including all the AI systems which are at the moment existing. And we have like those technologies in every sector, like especially in financial sector, marketing, retail industry. And the question is, how can we minimize social, environmental, and economic risks which are associated with technology development and deployment? But what does it mean, sustainability, with regard to AI systems? So I think it is really important to mention that it's not only about the ecological impacts. We have sustainability is a complex and multidimensional concept. I think we are all aware of this. So we also have the dimension of social, the social dimension, like decent living conditions, social cohesion and empowerment. We also have the ecological sustainability dimension. We also talked about this issue, like keeping with the planetary boundaries. And we have like a kind of economic dimension, which means that economic decisions have to be made with responsibility for the common good and respect for planetary boundaries. So like the economic dimension is very much embedded into the social and ecological dimension, because without like a social cohesion and society, which is like we cannot like create any economic activity, and without a planet we cannot live. So it's like really embedded into this thing. I think that's really important to keep in mind when we are talking also about the benefits of AI systems. So to make this perspective a little bit more concrete and accessible, we created a set of indicators In the social area, for example, these are issues like non-discrimination, self-determination, data protection, but also issues like co-design, participatory design, and also issues such as cultural appropriateness. So the question, like, can we integrate local cultural values into the design of the systems, and in which context does all those technologies actually work? Because we often see that those technologies are developed in the global south, and often they're only working in those cultural contexts. So that's a really huge problem we are seeing. And then we have also the economic dimension, and we talked very much in the project about what could be feasible indicators, but there are things such as market diversity. So how can we unlock the innovation potential also for small and medium companies? And then we have the issue of working condition and jobs, which is of course also a social aspect, and like what are the distribution effects in target markets. I will not go into detail, but you can like go into more detail with all our publications and the stuff on the project. And we have those environmental indicators, energy consumption, CO2 emissions, but also the issue of embodied shared emissions, and what are the sustainability potential regarding the use and application, if there are any. And we also have this cross-cutting indicators like regarding the governance of AI systems. So how are they organizationally embedded into the developing or the deploying organization? Is there a code of conduct? Is there risk management? And all those things. So what we can see is that when we really want to apply sustainability perspective on AI systems, it's a quite complex issue, and we have very much impacts that we need to take into account. I will not talk that much about the select sustainability impacts, because I think we heard already much about this before. But well, we have, and I think we're all aware of this, the issue of discrimination, for example, regarding in the healthcare sector, where we have an example from the US where an algorithm used by over 2 million people predicted patients that which predicts which patients were likely to need additional medical care, which favored white patients over black patients. We have many other examples of this. And we also have the issue of the carbon footprint, which was already also mentioned before. Here we can see some numbers from a recent study which was conducted 2 years ago, which is comparing like different kind of machine learning models. And we see that, for example, GPT-3 has a carbon footprint of 552 tons. And there are other models which have a smaller carbon footprint, depending also on what kind of electricity was used to train the models. Was it like nuclear, renewable energy, or fossil energy? So we see that it's a quite big issue, and we already heard all these things from my colleague from Algorithm Watch. But what we also see is there's developing a wide range of tools with which can organizations which are developing or deploying machine learning systems use and apply to track or measure or calculate the environmental impact, such as the code carbon, the Python package, which you can like introduce some lines of code to measure the carbon footprint. And there are also other tools, Carbon Tracker or ML CO2 impact, where you can just like write how long did you train the model, on which device, in which country, and there you can see, okay, that's carbon footprint, or that's the environmental impact regarding the energy consumption and the carbon emission deriving, for example, from the model training. We already heard this issue about water consumption, which in my opinion is a really, really pressuring issue. And I don't see any regulative effort where this issue is really, really addressed. So I think we really should discuss about how can we address this issue, because it's really like a huge amount of water that is needed in those data centers. For example, the Dirección General de Aguas in Chile said, okay, did a study where they said it's approximately 169 liters of water per second. So it's really much water. And normally there's huge fresh water, so we have all those conflicts which were also addressed by Anita. So, and we also have this issue of like hardware and electronic waste, because it's not only a problem regarding the deposit of the waste, but it's also a problem of the energy consumption of all the devices, because the majority of the energy consumption derives from the production process. So we really have like to take into account that for AI, we also use more and more hardware, such as drones, sensors, radar systems, CPU, and all those stuff. And that's really important problem with regard to the environmental impact. And I think what's also really important to keep in mind is that from a sustainability perspective, we also have conflicting objectives. So it's not that easy to say, okay, we need energy efficient machine learning models, or we need this or we need that, because it's like really a complex issue. When you say, for example, so I picked some examples for which could be conflicting objectives from a sustainability perspective. For example, we can think about shifting from local data centers to cloud providers, but that could be ecologically reasonable, but promotes market concentration in the cloud market. So from an economic perspective, might be not sustainable. Or we have also those conflicting goals between like curated data sets or the data quality, which really is a requirement also regarding the AI Act, and the working condition of click workers, like the people who label the data and like who are responsible for, to some extent, like for ensuring data quality, or which work goes into the ensuring the data quality. And we also can think about like AI models which have a reduced environmental footprint, but which are used for purposes that conflict with sustainability goals. For example, exploitation of new oil reserves, personalized advertising. Oh, there's something in German written. I'm sorry for this. But okay. Yeah, and I think that's really our issues that we have to keep in mind when we look at how can we shape AI development in favor of sustainability. And I hope, we can discuss a little bit on this issue and how we can, move forward in this field. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rode. That was very insightful, especially also the to have now presented the multifaceted dimensions of sustainability, including the social sustainability, ecological, as well as economic sustainability. And I think something that you also presented there regarding the data on AI, I think this is something very crucial, right? That we also heard from our the speakers from the opening remarks, that we need a robust data set for the evolution of AI. So it's also pointed out the possibilities of the Brazilian market by Mr. Mosquera, regarding that, with a diverse population like Brazil, there can be interesting data sets generated for the further development of AI systems. Let me now turn over to Jacqueline Lopez from Ericsson, who is representing here the B20 in this session. Please, Ms. Lopez, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you, GIZ and the B20 team for this opportunity. I work at Ericsson, a company which is almost 150 years old and has been operating in more than 180 countries. I'm based in Brazil, where Ericsson is this year celebrating 100 years in the country. So thank you to my colleagues from this panel and from the previous ones also for stating all the benefits from AI for business. I think this is quite clear, and this is one of the topics that we have been enhancing in our B20 discussions. Ericsson has mentioned this co-chair at the Digital Transformation Working Group. But it's important to understand how can AI and technology accelerate sustainability efforts. Let me start by describing the 5G case. 5G can reduce emissions between 15 and 20% because 5G is an enabling technology. So it's across different sectors from Industry 4.0, education, healthcare, agriculture, and so many others. On top of that, it will also reduce energy consumption. So sustainability is one of the benefits of 5G. On top of economic growth, we estimate that in Latin America, 5G can grow the GDP of the region by 5% by 2030. This is because it's increasing the competitiveness of those different sectors that I just mentioned, and they can export more, produce more, while being sustainable as well. And the third benefit of 5G is digital inclusion, also a very important topic for both B20, G20, and other groups that have been working on that. So while we are connecting remote areas and connecting people, we are improving the quality of life of the whole society. But moving specifically to the AI topic, AI is an enabler technology for the next generation of system automation. And I would like to share an example on how is that. Let me share the own Ericsson example. So Ericsson committed itself to be net zero in our own activities by 2030 and reduce by 50% the emissions by the same period, while being net zero across the whole value chain until 2040. So this is 10 years before it was required globally. But how can we do that? And we notice that the supply chain can be a challenge for many companies in different sectors. And to illustrate what I'm just explaining here, I'm going to use the transportation case. So transportation accounts for around 30% of emissions worldwide. In order to use this to reduce the emissions across the whole value chain, and there are sectors that are dedicated for that, you can use AI to be more sustainable. How? AI can optimize product transportation. You need to monitor, you need to predict, and then you can reduce your emissions. So for instance, as said here before, monitoring is basically collecting and organizing the data. And then when you move to prediction, you can use machine learning, you can use regression, clustering, and other techniques to make those data available to then reduce the emissions. And which kind of examples can illustrate that in terms of transportation, for instance? You could have fleet optimization, like shared trucks. You could have improved planning on how you are using your fleet. And also predictive maintenance of this transportation. So by using this data, monitoring, prediction, and then you reduce emissions, you will see how powerful AI is to make it more sustainable. And this is beyond our sector. I'm talking about the supply chain and how technology can enhance and AI can enhance this sustainable initiative. But you can go further And second case that I would like to share, this is connected to also corporate social responsibility, is the Connected Mangrove, an initiative that Ericsson had with partners in Malaysia and Philippines, but also using AI, monitoring, prediction, and reduction of emissions to protect this very important mangrove ecosystem that supports keeping control in terms of climate change. And last example, but not least, breaking the energy curve. So I mentioned that 5G can support energy reduction. And why is that? While the traffic data will increase by 4 times by 2030, energy consumption will remain the same. This is due to a lot of investment in terms of innovation for hardware and software. So our own technology is now sustainable. But those equipment, they are used to different sectors, as mentioned, because digital transformation is an enabler for competitiveness of other end users in different industries. So we have many different cases now in London, in Canada, Rogers Park, and now trial in Brazil about this, what we call breaking the energy curve, which is basically reducing the energy consumption by using 5G. So all those cases, they show how applied artificial intelligence can make a sustainable change. This also shows how the commitment to strategic focus on the Sustainable Development Goals, SDG 9, which is related to industry, innovations, and infrastructure, and 17, which use partnership to enhance all those efforts. It can contribute to a positive impact in terms of scaling this up. And then you may ask, how about public policy? Which kind of policy governments should pursue to promote and to achieve sustainability? So fostering innovation, and AI is part of that, is key. And as shown before, AI and technology, they can accelerate green transition. So governments should not block this innovation. They should actually foster that, either by using regulation to enhance the innovation, or it could be also, for instance, funding or some incentivizing some pilots, because, for instance, creating awareness about pilots can show to different industry sectors what is possible and what is the outcome of those initiatives. So once you have this working, you can share this to scale this up and get more positive impact for the system. So in a summary, on top of improving performance, AI supports sustainability. And it's up to us, business, society, and government, to work in partnership on this to promote all those benefits and scale this up across the different countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lopez, also to providing us with these hands-on practical solutions of AI and sustainability, and also highlighting also the need for public policy that enhance or support innovation, and as well support the implementation of pilot projects that also Ericsson is currently doing. So let me now turn over to our last speaker for this panel, Mr. Adegoge. Please go ahead. The floor is yours.
All right, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to speak on this event and to offer perspective from Africa, specifically civil society organization, and I'm also a member of the T20. And I've listened to the conversation so far, the deliberation and the insights that are being shared by the very cerebral speaker that have spoken on this topic. What I'm going to do is to speak to a context of Africa in the entire conversation around harmonizing innovation and nature. and in terms of ensuring sustainable, practices in AI development and operation. Listening to the immediate past previous speaker from Ericsson, I think that for African governments, for example, the message as to embracing AI, it's something that resonates with African leaders or African governments. And that's because of the promises that have been made in terms of how AI can be very useful in addressing the major challenges being faced by African countries, such as, hunger, poverty, underdevelopment, etc. Also, it must be noted that Africa has an energy problem in such a way that it can't currently meet its energy needs. However, it is desirable to African government to embrace AI in addressing its challenges. Then that creates a dilemma in terms of the energy need in terms of AI adoption, and at the same time, the conversation around sustainable environment and what impact having more investment around things like data centers that enables Africa to adopt AI, how that affects the sustainability agenda or renewable agenda. However, in order to provide some sort of recommendations in terms of how to navigate this from an African perspective, I think there needs to be a lot of conversation around sustainable practices in AI development and AI operation. And while it is relatable for Africa to want to adopt AI to address some of its challenges, we have to also look at an important conversation which barely makes it to the top of the discussion, which is the net benefit of adoption of technology for Africans. And when I say net benefit, I mean in terms of, I don't think there is an argument in terms of what the advantages that technology brings or the benefits, the potential benefit that technology brings. What we don't talk about well enough is what is the net benefit. In other words, what do Africans have to give to be able to get those benefits? And at the end of the day, the benefits that African attract, does it justify what African has to give? So when we contextualize this within the conversation around, environment and all of that, then you are then looking at how does African benefit from AI, for example, without doing so much damage to the environment? And I think I have a few ideas that I would like to share. I think the first thing I would like to talk about is that there is a need for aggressive civil society campaign in terms of public awareness around the promotion of efficiency and sustainable practices in AI development and operation. So, for example, I don't think Africans should adopt AI, hook, line, and sinker. Africa should be very deliberate by ensuring that there is design optimization, for example, such that AI algorithms that require less computational power. Because, as I said earlier, Africa has a serious energy problem, and it can't afford to dedicate too much of its energy capacity to AI system. Therefore, it has to be deliberate about going deliberately for AI system that requires less energy, that has less energy consumption. And it can do that also by pursuing data center running on renewable energy. I know that the German government has been, on a lot of advocacy around promoting renewable energy in Africa. And I think that there is an opportunity for Africa in its, pursuit of AI adoption, AI innovation, probably to set standards for companies coming into Africa to invest in AI innovation, and probably create a mandatory system that require that renewable energy has to be the option. Another thing is also about efficient data management system, efficient data storage system. That is also very important in terms of making sure that materials are sourced responsibly to ensure that manufacturing processes are environmental friendly. Another thing that I see as an opportunity is, ensuring like some sort of collaboration between the tech companies and environmental organization. I think that tech companies that are investing in Africa, they need to work very closely to environmental organizations to kind of understand what is the environmental objective for Africa, for example, so that in their investments, there is some sort of responsibility around ensuring that investments aligns with those environmental, sustainability. One other thing I want to also speak to is the need to fund and encourage the promotion of renewable energy adoption in Africa. Talk about funding because of the resources that comes from the global north, for example, to Africa, either to support initiatives, etc. They could be channeled into kind of encourage renewable energy adoption. So, for example, innovations that seeks to promote renewable energy should be prioritized over other types of innovation that probably some of these country or companies are looking forward to support. And I think one of the points mentioned by the speaker from Ericsson is also about corporate social responsibility initiatives. I think I support that point, but I also think that in that context, there should also be a deliberate effort to promote, renewable energy, sustainable energy system around the CSR initiative in African jurisdiction and in African countries. Another thing is, I think that the UN can also play a role in terms of its the guiding principle on business and human rights. I think there has to be a deliberate effort to promote sustainable practices, AI development and operation, and I think that that guiding principle now needs to be updated to mainstream this principle in terms of how we hold businesses accountable. This has to be a key issue for especially within the context of Africa and all of that. I think lastly, before I run out of time, I would love to speak to also the need for some advocacy and awareness campaign. Civil society organization needs to be mobilized to advocate for policies and practices that promote sustainable AI in Africa. Because the way in which African governments are adopting AI, there is less attention to some of the challenges around impact on environment, for example, because that is not the priority. The priority is hunger, poverty, and so it's very difficult to mainstream issues around sustainable business practices into the process. So it takes a lot of civil society work and effort to be able to make that a part of the priority. So I do think that civil society needs to be brought to the table to really push forward in terms of advocacy and campaign so that these issues are also, taken as priority. I'm looking at the time and it seems like I've run out of time, so I'm going to stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Agegoge, especially also bringing us the African perspective on this debate and highlighting also the need for advocacy campaigns of the civil society. I think here in this round, we really come together and sharing different perspectives from the private sector as well as the civil society as well as the academia. So we can really have a good dimensional, good overview of the discussion, the needs of both of the several stakeholders here involved. Now let me invite also our our participants of this webinar. If you have any questions, please open your mic and ask the questions to the speakers directly. Or if you have any remarks or comments, please do so as well. We're going to collect 2 or 3 questions per block and then do a quick round of questions. And also, we're going to look at the possible questions from the YouTube chat. So if there's anybody from the participants who wants to, I see a hand up from Ashish Kavarana. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. This looks like an extremely charged topic, so I won't try and take one side or another. But I'm going to try and set the context maybe for a comment and then a question to a large group of the panel. When we look at fundamentally what AI has done, it's actually been quite dramatic. And I wanted to start by asking a question in terms of what is the negative impact of the things that we consider to normally be positive? Say, for example, productivity. Productivity means if you're overproductive, you may not be innovative. If you're intelligent, you might end up being a little bit more manipulative. If you regulate too much, you might restrict something new coming up. And if you're sustainable, then your growth might be restricted as well. But here's the question, and here's the comment that I'm trying to ascertain, because I sort of agree, and I think Jacqueline from Ericsson mentioned this as well. AI is just not Gen AI. It is also different other types of AIs. For example, if you have predictive AI, and we do at Colliers, we do building management. So we also figure ways in which you can do predictive maintenance. If you create a AI model or a 2D twin or so on and so forth, you can actually go ahead and see if there could be a potential issue with the building and save costs in doing that in that regard. But the question that I wanted to ask everybody is, at what point do you feel, say, for example, the tech companies, as one of the past speakers suggested, could come together with concerns from environmental groups and other folks like us who understand that there are, say, for example, just in India where I live, and I know one of the speakers spoken about this as well, we will see effectively from 2024 to 2026 a doubling of the installed capacity in megawatts of data centers just in a 2-year period. At what point do we sit down and say, okay, there is a discussion to be had, and how do we have that discussion? And is there a perception amongst groups that are advocating for sustainability that tech companies have the resources and the might to not be able to do that? And also the second question that I wanted to ask was, in relation to Gen AI, which is really fantastic. A lot of us think of Gen AI as being a kid with a new toy. Essentially, we're running around and trying to find the answers to everything. And a lot of my clients are trying to develop their own Gen AI models using their own proprietary data sets. The question is, how much is too much? Essentially, if today ChatGPT has the ability to give you answers at the level of a high school student, and tomorrow it gives you PhD level answers, at what point is it too much? And the third question would rather be in relation to the seriousness of developing AGI or autonomous AI, which is restricted by the EU regulation. Anything that could think for itself and make decisions and so on and so forth is very clearly understood. Do you think that we need an environmental regulation that covers something along those lines as well, where we say the environment is as serious as the survival of the human race, because it really is? So I don't know if I've actually made the divisions in the panel a little bit worse, but I'm hoping that we have the answers to those questions at some point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cavarana. No, I think your questions are very relevant to this panel, and I don't know if somebody feels, yeah. So go ahead with Jacqueline Lopez to answer some of the questions of Mr. Caravana. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. I think in terms of negotiating across different perspectives, this is precisely the role of this panel and other initiatives that we have been holding. So Ericsson is a co-chair of the B2N Digital Transformation. I'm here with my colleague from Siemens, who is also a co-chair, and we have several other participants doing the same. And we have different engagements group that they will go all together, give recommendations to the G20, so the governments can decide in terms of the public policies how to handle the perspectives. But of course, we are all seeking consensus. And I think the first part of that, and this is one of the important parts of this kind of event, is creating awareness so we can listen to each other and understand the different perspectives, because there are also different sectors involved. So I think in terms of dialogue, G20 and all the engagements groups such as B20 can play a significant role to promote this kind of dialogue and reach consensus. And to your second question, I think we should not be afraid about innovation. So if you consider that maybe 10 years ago, I was then discussing about telemedicine, and people, they were thinking about how should we regulate that. And then about 5 years later, the pandemic came. And then telemedicine was not a discussion. It was a need to keep people alive and to keep the quality of the life of the people. So you see that innovation goes faster than the discussions of regulations. And I think this is why we need to be prepared to foster and to enable innovation. Of course, you can create mechanisms of dialogue. So someone mentioned in the panel before about public consultations. This is always good to promote dialogue across different perspectives. But we should foster innovation because you don't know what is necessary and when we will need that. you have things that are going to be discovered or possible that you may not even imagine at this point. And of course, while doing that, you just need to keep this dialogue open so you can listen to different perspectives and improving it step by step while you keep innovating.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lopez. And I turn over to Ms. Gurumati.
Thank you very much. Yes, I think it's a hornet's nest. And thank you very much to Jacqueline for also this wonderfully balanced perspective, which I wish to add to. But what I would like to point to is that all of these are questions of political choice. And the political choices that we make are all usually an assessment at the level of democracy about the opportunity costs. So what are you spending on and what do you need to innovate for? I think innovation is important, but the question about what are we innovating for, towards what, is important, because policymakers have certain fiscal resources at their disposal, and those fiscal resources have to be put to good use. Now, whether you're setting up a data center, inviting a public-private partnership, giving land to, let's say, a large company, transnational company, or you're using that land for alternative uses, for livelihoods, for different kinds of experiments, is very much a democratic debate. So it's not really that people who seek to challenge Big Bang AI are essentially against innovation, but I think they are for democratic dialogue. The second thing is that in terms of decentralized trajectories of innovation, I think we need to do a lot. For instance, oftentimes when I read these debates, people talk about how the marginal costs for an average user of Netflix, which is just a Web 2.0 technology, is so small. It's like, anywhere in the world, let's take the United States, you spend an average of $15 a month, which is nothing. But if you actually looked at a set of prompts that you give to Gen AI, one of the estimates says that it needs half a liter of water just to put in 5 to 50 prompts. Now, in a country where people are hungry, people don't have water to drink, and women have to walk 20 kilometers to fill a pot of water, which may not even be potable water, the question then is it worthwhile setting up a data center? But if you were to take a pro-innovation approach, you would ask the question, are there possibilities to actually have small-scale data innovation so that everything on scale need not be spectacular and sensational? Actually, what may be spectacular and sensational may also operate on small scale and bring about benefits to the local population, so that you're not really looking at exploitative, extractive mechanisms, but accountable and regenerative mechanisms. And this is, of course, not just a technical question, it's a techno-political question. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gurumati. And I see Mr. Dietelmann also raised his hand. Please go ahead.
I just wanted to add, because one of the questions touched upon the AI Act regulation in Europe that is now in place. And there we had lots of discussions, political discussions about how much regulation is too much regulation, how do we want to address this, and so on. How do we make it adaptable? And there is a place, or a small chunk of AI systems that are being now banned in the EU as part of this unacceptable high risk category. So there were some clear limits that the policymakers were willing to set, and to say there should be some clear limits, and these are limits of political choice, as Anita put out. So and this is not something that is against innovation in any way, right? I think we all agree here that this provides the guidelines that you need for innovation, right? A framework, clear guardrails that guide you, and this is the kind of innovation that we want. This is the area where we want to see, where we want to reap the benefits of AI. And I'm not even sure if it's that much of a loaded debate as one of the questions mentioned, because I didn't hear much opposition to the idea that there is environmental harms of AI and that they need to be addressed. So in that light, I wanted to say that sometimes this balancing idea is not really working out, because if you have the benefits and the harms not in the same place, for example, if the benefits of an AI system are created in Europe, but the environmental harms are created, let's say, in Chile, because of the high energy consumption, the water consumption, and the electronic waste, then this is not really a balance that brings us forward in terms of global justice and in terms of overall environmental goals. Just wanted to point that out, that the balancing things against each other is not always the right solution, in my view.
Thank you very much, Mr. Levan, for your intervention. I see also that Mr. Wave also raised his hand. Please, Mr. Wave, you can go ahead with your contribution to the discussion.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ricky Wei from Yale School in France, and I'm a social professor here. And I think the previous speakers has already focused on some important points in terms of the impact of AI on the environment. And I will add one more point, which is about a framework that we can use to analyze the impact. But actually, at the moment, we may not have a very clear framework to analyze the impacts of AI on the environment, because we need to look at the whole life cycle of the AI production process. For example, from production, from operation, from end of life cycle, and also transportation as well. And actually, a lot of this data a lot of this data are only about ICT infrastructure. We may not have the data about AI specifically. So which means that it's not very transparent for us to understand the impacts of AI, because we lack this data. And if you want to collect some data in terms of the transportation of hardware and its operation process, and also the production of the data center, we may not have the data about specifically about AI. We only have the data about ICT infrastructure. So we may need to think about how to track this data and link this back to AI rather than only the ICT infrastructure or the ICT hardware. And I think this is very important. And another thing is that we can also maybe create a framework to encourage companies to apply for the certificates of green AI. And if these companies can have a certificate of green AI, which means that they use a renewable energy to power their data center, to develop this model or train this model, and they may be able to get some funding or policy support from government, and so that they are more encouraged or more motivated to use renewable energy and to develop these models. And we may also want to encourage them to share this data and to link this data back to AI specifically. And then we can use this data to help them to apply for these certificates, so that we can have a clearer or more transparent picture about how companies use AI in the different processes. And these data reports can be also verified by third parties. And then we can develop such a framework, a certification framework globally. And then we may be able to get more data about AI specifically, and then develop more policy support for our companies, and to use renewable energy to use AI and develop AIs as well. So this may be my points, and I thanks again for your contribution, and I hope that this can also add to the discussion in terms of the framework that we can use to analyze the impact, and also get more data and link this data back to the usage of AI, so that we may know more about this as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Professor Wei, for your very practical contribution to and highlighting also what can be done to really have with this, yeah, what we can have to really have data to provide a sustainability AI. And now I see also Fernanda Capanucci from, she also raised her hand. Please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I'm Fernanda, originally from Brazil, currently at the University of Münster as a postdoc research in Germany. So Frederic highlighted the importance of indicators such as co-design, participatory design for AI systems from a sustainability perspective. So I would like to ask Frederic and maybe also Anita and Killian if they want to jump in this conversation. How do you envision this concept really being implemented in the near future? And if they are currently being reflected, if you think they are currently being reflected in the regulatory debates in any way, because I think they are critical, but I really don't see the train going to this place. That's why your work is so important to have this more broad perspective on sustainability. Thank you.
Ms. Holder, you want to go ahead?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you very much for appreciating our work. I think, well, when it goes to regulation, I can't dive that much deep into this issue, but perhaps my colleague from Algorithm Watch can add this. Well, what I think is important to look at how can we implement like co-design principles within like the organizational structures where those systems are developed. For example, we are seeing that many of the companies which are developing those models are having like this some kind of agile project management tools like Scrum and stuff like this. And we also looked into how can we, where is the point where we can like try to apply some kind of those co-design principles. For example, is it in the user story? So point where they think about what is this tool actually for, which people does it need, or which needs does this technology serve? Or there's also some kind of sprint reviews. So they're doing those sprints in order to do the coding process, like it's a 2-weekly period, or I'm not quite sure. So we also looked at how can we like integrate these issues into the organizational procedures where the AI systems are developed. I think that's a really important starting point for doing this. And perhaps, I'm not quite sure, but if you look at the AI Act and the things which need to be implemented in the future, like risk management systems or things like code of conduct, you can think about integrating some kind of those co-design, participatory design principles into those systems which need to be developed because of the AI Act. So I think this makes much sense.
Just to jump in, I just wanted to quickly draw your attention to the fact that regulatory approaches that lay the limits and constrain particular forms of innovation are important. But I would also like to underline the fact that policy has an important role in encouraging alternatives. And there we just recently in December worked with the Platform Cooperativism Consortium to bring out with the local government in India from the state of Kerala a declaration on a new innovation ecosystem for our collective digital futures. It's available in several Indian and foreign languages. It's a very short declaration, but it actually talks about a new paradigm for innovation public goods. Because if you actually provide infrastructure, including, for instance, intelligence infrastructures, analytics, cloud, etc., as a public good, as public infrastructure, there's a possibility to encourage enterprises that are local, that can store data. So you're actually encouraging a healthy dynamic, a virtuous dynamic, if you will, between public infrastructures and people's initiatives, private initiatives, commons initiatives, etc. So what I'd like to say is that you need a whole of society approach, not only to restrain practices that may be inimical to society and the environment, but you also need to encourage through public policy and public investments, civic intelligence, and a different kind of sustainable digital transition. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Friederike, Ms. Rode, and Ms. Gurumati. We have also some questions from the chat, from the YouTube chat. One from Anaju Santos, and from Ana Maria Eschin. And she is asking, what ways can regulation promote collaboration between AI and other emerging technologies, such as IoT and blockchain for sustainability? Maybe you, Luis Miguel, would like to take these questions regarding also your position at Siemens.
Yes, as I mentioned in my presentation, we are not building anything. We are not in position to build anything by ourselves. We need to collaborate and cooperate. And I think that the key for this development is the companies like Siemens, like Ericsson, like other companies that are here, trade associations and think tanks to cooperate to pursue new developments and new technologies. So the key for the development here is the cooperation and co-creation, and companies like ours to join forces towards the development.
Thank you very much. And we also have another question from Anaju Santos. And she's asking, considering the disparities in access to technology connectivity between regions, what strategies and training programs can we implement to develop local professionals and promote sustainable AI usage? Maybe you want to take up this question, Mr. Adeboye.
If you don't mind, can you please repeat the question? I didn't get the question.
Sure. Considering the disparities in access to technology and connectivity between regions, what strategies and training programs can we implement to develop local professionals and promote sustainable AI usage?
All right, thank you very much. I think that there are already a lot of ongoing effort in that regard in terms of building local capacity to promote AI development. The only challenge to that is because from a globalization perspective, many of the talents that are developed locally eventually make their way to Europe, to America, where there are more resources to probably pay for their time, and also where they get more opportunity to express themselves. So I do think that that is really where the conversation should be in terms of how do you then encourage local talent, investment in human resources locally. How do you retain those talents? I do think that one of the ways to do that is to create an ecosystem that supports local capacity, not just in terms of capacity building, but also in terms of reward, or if you like, in terms of decent income, decent reward for labor. I do think that's really where the challenge is. I don't think talent is the problem, but I think the issue is around how do you retain those talents to keep them motivated to stay within the local ecosystem, to be able to support this objective without them being attracted to of course entreaties from the global north, basically. So that's what would be my recommendation, really, because it's an ongoing issue in terms of retaining local talent, and I think that's where the focus should be.
Thank you very much. I think, let me see if we have more questions from the chat. Otherwise, are there any questions from our participants here in our call? So there's one more question from Ana Maria Eschin. What are the risks and opportunities of using AI for geoengineering and climate manipulation? And how can we ensure that these technologies are used responsibly and ethically? Maybe you, Jacqueline, wants to answer this question.
Can you please repeat the sector that the question is referring to?
There's no sector referring to, but it's regarding risks and opportunities of using AI for geoengineering climate manipulation, and how we can ensure that these technologies are used responsibly and ethically.
Thank you. So I think I mentioned that the technology and AI in particular, they can actually become more sustainable across the industries. So this is actually an enabler to be more sustainable, and this can support the challenge of climate change. So you reduce emissions. Depending on the sector you are talking about, you may decide which kind of application is the best one. But I just shared two examples from completely different sectors, basically transportation and mangrove, that were using kind of the same pattern. They were using organizing data, prediction, and then this would reduce emissions. So this all together is a powerful tool to reduce emissions and improve sustainability. So we are talking here about the climate change. And I think to define for each country, because we are here as part of B20, giving recommendations to G20 along with different engagement groups, you should promote this kind of dialogues, because each country may have a different situation from one another. And as mentioned before from my colleagues here in the panel, for some countries, digital inclusion plays also a big role. For some countries, you may need to work in terms of connectivity before. And then you can also consider those tools to give access to AI. So for instance, if you are depending on connectivity, but you are working from a remote area that's not connected yet, is there any kind of public policy that you can support to bring connectivity to those different regions? Could it be, for instance, replacing fees for spectrum to coverage obligations so you can connect remote areas, you can connect schools? Could you consider any kind of funding to give this to different players from the ecosystem for those applications you may target near focus? Could be sustainability, could be education, or others. And then you could promote this in a specific area that your country is talking about. But this kind of challenge is not for one person, for one company. We are talking about the whole group of companies, countries, NGOs, and the whole ecosystem here collaborating together to achieve the best result. Because in the end, I think we are all want to have innovation working for sustainability. And we know already from the pilots that we can achieve that, but we need to work together to scale this up.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lopez. And I see that Mr. Adeboye also raised his hand. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Just to contribute to that question, just a few things. That in terms of mitigating risk, I do think that there is a lot of regulatory responsibility that can help to achieve that, and I do understand concerns around how regulation can also negatively impact innovation if there's too much regulation around innovation. But I do think that because innovation comes with risk, and there has to be proactive effort to, number one, accept the fact that there are inherent risks in every innovation. That's number one. Number two is that there has to be also proactive attempt at mitigating those risks through regulatory approaches. And some of these regulatory approaches are so that we acknowledge that there are issues around technology or innovation. And number two, that we create safeguards around those risk factors so that businesses, for example, the investors, the technology companies, in the deployment of those technology are also at the same time providing safeguards or means of mitigating some of the risks. I think what usually happens is that a lot of times we allow innovation to go. I mean, we have this common saying that innovation goes at a faster pace than regulation, and that's a fact. However, we should not totally take our eyes off the fact that we can actually safely innovate. We can actually be deliberate in terms of highlighting the risks that is associated with innovation. But this is not to discourage innovation, but this is to then ensure that innovation is embraced safely with enough knowledge, around the use and deployment of innovation, with enough knowledge to mitigate this risk. I think it helps to have a more safe and secure innovation in that context than to probably deny the risk inherent in innovation and wait until its impact is being felt at a larger scale before we start having conversation around mitigating the risk. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adeboye. I think we are now looking at the time, coming to an end of our very complex discussion here regarding AI and sustainability. Let me just briefly reflect on the key insights here that we were provided from the distinguished speakers from this first panel, looking at really the importance of a holistic approach also regarding the productivity chain, looking at how we can monitor the environmental impact of AI, and also looking at the overall sustainability and looking at the ecological as well as the social aspects of sustainability and AI systems. And lastly, also looking at the benefits and the positive sides of what AI can bring to the combat of climate change. And it was very interesting that our speakers also from B20 highlighted the models and measures that are taken and the possibilities there of pilot projects that can help further support sustainability on our planet. Lastly, I just want to invite all our participants and to follow us on LinkedIn. Our LinkedIn page is the International Digital Dialogue. You can also look at our website to participate in future events like these webinars, and also to follow to see what we're currently doing also in other countries like India, Indonesia, Kenya, South Korea, and Japan, to name a few. Lastly, I just want to thank you all our distinguished speakers for your insightful contributions, and also to each participant for your engagement and commitment to this vital cause. Thank you very much, and have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.